So I remember on my channel, back when the refugee crisis was a thing, I was pointing out that eventually they are going to push to give the refugees a right to vote. And everyone was like, oh, it's a slippery slope, slippery, the slope is so slippery. Well, we slipped and we reached the bottom of the slope. Now, apparently in the United Kingdom, there is a campaign in order to push to give non-UK citizens a right to vote. Now, there was this article a couple of weeks ago that said anyone from around the world should have a say in American elections. Like, anyone should be able to vote because the United States affects the whole world. So even people like myself from Romania should be able to vote in the American elections. Quite ridiculous, but at least that was just an opinion piece from a newspaper. No, this is actual legislation. There are actual people from the British government that are pushing for this. And I guess if people don't really have an education into politics and they don't really understand how democracies are supposed to work, they might be guilt-tripped into agreeing with this. So, first of all, let's examine what this does, right? Like, they claim that this has nothing to do with Brexit. They claim that this is not a left-leaning or a right-leaning issue. It is a human issue, right? Because it's not fair for all the people, for all the migrants that are working in the United Kingdom to not be able to have a say in British politics. First of all, this is completely false. Britain is by far one of the countries that is more progressive in allowing migrants to have a right of opinion by the fact that they can actually vote in local elections. But the mayor is still under the authority of the government, so at the end of the day, it's not a major event. It's still like an interesting compromise, one that I wouldn't want in my country. But, right, at least in Britain, if you're an immigrant, you can still have a say in the way your town is run. But we're not talking about local elections anymore. No, we're talking about the government. And you have to understand, when a person immigrates into another country, let's say you immigrate in Azerbaijan. You find a really good job there. Find a good business opportunity. When you go to work in Azerbaijan, do you expect that you're going to receive the same voting rights as the rest of the citizens? Do you expect that you're going to be able to have a say in Azerbaijan's politics? Of course not. So why do we have British MPs talking as if it's a right for the people that come into their country to be able to vote in the elections? Well, think about it. If you go to Azerbaijan, you don't know the language. For the very first months, you're going to be dependent on the state to help you have welfare, to help you have a roof over your head, to help you integrate, to help you find a job. And all of these things make you reliant on the political forces and machinations of that state that advocate for big government, that advocate for the nanny state, because you're pretty much like a child at this stage. You don't know anyone, you don't know how to communicate with the people there probably. You're still in a learning experience. So you do need help from the government in order to get you to integrate. And chances are you also want to bring your family. If life is really good in Azerbaijan, you're going to want to bring your family from back home to move there. So you're going to support whatever political forces in that nation ask for more immigration. So what this means is that the immigrant, in the case of Britain, is most likely to vote for the left. They're going to vote for more welfare. They're going to vote for more free shit. And this is at the expense of the people that used to be there, the taxpayers, right, who constantly have to advocate for this social programs. Now, what's wrong with this, right? Like, what's wrong with voting left? Well, you send a message to the representatives, you send a message to the government that they don't really need to fix the nation's problems anymore. They don't really need to fix the economy. They don't really need to try and lower the crime and increase security. All they have to do is to bring people from the outside, millions of people from the outside that are extra votes. So, you know, if I'm a leftist party in charge in the government right now and I'm doing bad in the polls, well, just bring a couple more millions from somewhere else and they're going to vote for me. So you kind of disincentivize people from actually addressing the issues, from actually fixing the concerns of the people that are citizens. And in exchange, you're like, no, just open the door. More people, they're going to vote for us. And what really annoys me is that this is not how democracy is supposed to work. This is not how the founders of the modern day democracy envisioned it. In fact, they would be spitting in their grave had they listened to some of the speeches that come from these new MPs that are suggesting this ridiculous notion. And what really annoys me the most is that they're trying to shame people into it. It's like the current system, the current voting laws should shame us as a society. Yeah, I agree, society should be shamed that it has people like you in charge. I definitely do not understand how you can say that it's shameful, considering that I don't think any other country in the world has this system. Like, I don't expect that if I emigrate towards any nation, towards Saudi Arabia, towards Canada, towards Australia, towards New Zealand, I don't think if I emigrate towards one of those, that they will at one point give me the right to vote in their elections if I don't become a citizen. Now, of course, you know, people who live in a country for usually a decade, they have a lot of paths open to them for citizenship. And, you know, maybe they can marry someone, or they can fulfill certain criterias, and then they can become a citizen. But that's a completely different conversation. Now, what they say is that if you're a resident, if you just happen to live there, you should be able to vote. And you have like people like David Lammy who is supporting this. Like, if you don't know who David Lammy is, he is the gentleman who looked at the charity for Africa, and he complained that the commercial for the charity made Africa look poor. And he had like this entire news segment saying, oh no, Africa is a wealthy nation. It's a very wealthy nation. And as a result, a lot of people were like, well, you know what, maybe he's right. Maybe Africa is a wealthy nation. Better keep my money then. Like, I'm not going to give money to the rich. You know, I want to give money to the poor. So he managed to tank a charity with his very interesting opinions. And there's also other people from Labour that are taking part in this nonsense. So MP Russell Moyle said the fact that millions of people who live in this country and have made their lives here are denied a vote is how they are governed out to shame us as a society. I don't think any of the people, had the delusions that if they go to Britain, they will be able to vote there. And if that were the case, if this is the argument, then Hungary did nothing wrong by locking their borders and refusing to take immigrants in. They just don't want, you know, to treat these people unfairly and have them live in a nation where they don't have a say in politics. So I guess like the Hungarian way is a lot more civilized, right? Than to just let millions of people and mistreat them. What's even more ridiculous is how they're trying to poison the mind of society by saying, oh, it's just like the Boston Tea Party. It's just like the American Independence War, right? Because it's like taxation without representation. First of all, the people that are coming, the migrants, they are represented back home. They can still vote back home. The people that were in the United States, they couldn't vote. They didn't have any representatives. And they also couldn't leave. Like, most of them were sent through the New World via transportation. They couldn't return. Others couldn't afford the voyage, right? And in this particular idea, no, I disagree. It's not like the American Revolution at all. And the people that are still within Britain and the migrants, they can still have paths towards citizenship that they can take if they live there long enough and they have a stable job. Like, there's certain conditions you can fill. But again, like, imagine, like, they say this has nothing to do with Brexit. Okay, so let's say that Brexit happens, and then you have like millions upon millions of Europeans just going and moving into Britain, and then they will want to have another referendum to rejoin the European Union, and it doesn't matter what the British people want. Not to mention, like, you're opening yourself up for foreign intervention. You know, the left constantly cries about Russians interfering within politics and stuff like that. Now the Russians can just send millions of people in, and they can vote however Russia wants, you know, and this sounds funny and ridiculous. But this is what Turkey does. Like, Erdogan countless of times called for Turkish nationals that live abroad in other nations not to assimilate or to do certain things that Turkey wants, or to have a lot of kids so that they can have more say into the next elections if they have dual citizenship. Another example on why it's bad is that the government is the one that controls immigration. So, for example, if you have a lot of Ukrainians that are a lot more nationalistic, they're a lot more populist, if you will, they're a lot more Christian as well, the government can just say, well, no, we're not going to take them in. But instead they might decide to take a lot more open-minded people, a lot more tolerant Muslims, or immigrants from Africa and stuff like that. If you have like a referendum like Brexit, let's say you have Hungary that tries to organize to send a couple of billion people into Britain to vote in a certain way. The government can say, oh no, we're not going to allow Hungarians to come in, but we can let French and Germans to come in and participate at the referendum. So you can see how easy it is to suddenly manipulate democracy. You can see how it's just a matter of statistics, and it's like, okay, can we get like the people from this country and that country? And you can say, oh, it's a slippery slope, V. It's a slippery slope. Why do you have so much trust in these people? I just assume the worst. Okay, I'm looking like, what is the worst that can happen if this is being put into practice? How can people profit from this? How can people benefit from this? How can people use their interests to align with this new thing? That's how I judge things. I don't work on the basis of good faith and just, oh no, they just care about the poor people that are there and couldn't vote even though they never expected to vote in the first place. I don't think there's any nation in the world that just allows migrants to vote. In not local elections, but like general elections. I don't think that's the case. They also brought up, it's like apparently in Britain, if you're a British national, but you've been living abroad for 15 years, you don't have a right to vote back in Britain. It's a little bit harsh. In my country, you don't lose the right to vote like that, but they can always get the vote back if they come back into Britain. And what I personally noticed is that when someone moves away from a country, especially for a decade or even more, they don't get affected by that country's economical problems. I mean, maybe they have patriotism and they still care for the country that they left, but they're not going to be affected by economics. They're not going to be affected by the problems that the people that still live in that country are affected. And they're going to be a lot more ideologically inclined. Like they're going to start voting a lot more based on ideology rather than economic impacts. And as such, it's usually like the leftist parties that usually talk big heart and talk a lot about feelings and, But anyway, let me know what you think. I'll be reading the comments on this. I hope I managed to arm you guys with the opinions and try to get you to articulate into why this is a very bad thing. If you're in Britain, you should share this video because the YouTube algorithm isn't very kind. It would help me a lot if you can share it on social media and stuff. But make sure you open this conversation with your friends because, yeah, it seems that they are actually trying to pull this off. And I don't think it will pass, but the conversation definitely should happen to explain to people why it's not a good idea.